Alright everyone, time for a little bit of mega-analysis of certain current events and ideas because the foundation up populist revolution is working. I am happy to say that a healthy civic movement involving probably hundreds of thousands of people around the United States has taken hold. There are leadership figures, but a lot of it's grassroots. People go to see Scott Presler and he says, you can help out, get people registered to vote. And so they do, and if one person converts just one other person, it's doubled the effect of that central source of civic awareness. It's a great thing. He's doing a great job. Steve Bannon, he realized in one of his maybe more lucid moments, in between whiskey bottles, in all honesty, he realized, hey, there's an unspoken power that could be used by a relatively small number of people to effectively take over an entire political party. It's called local precincts. It's called the local races, which are disproportionately powerful. The main source of legal power in the U.S., this is really a video for the U.S. viewer more than anyone else, because it's not really this way in most countries. The main source of legal power, where your laws happen, where trials happen, etc., is the states. But the main source of organizational power for the political parties is local. Now, the Democrats are a very top-down, hierarchical, you can say dictatorial wannabe style of party. They have a federal platform and right now are bullying several of their own senators to fall into rank at the hazard of losing their own jobs because they represent red states. This shows you one of the main dysfunctions of their kind of nationalized ideology. The Republicans traditionally are more state level. That is that they're more maneuverable. You can say that it makes them weaker in some cases because you have less pressure to put on rogue members when, again, they just represent their constituents. And by the way, quick aside, Liz Cheney's not an example of this. She represents Wyoming. She's not a maverick who's representing her states against the wishes of a party gone wild. Now, the Manchin is a rogue, represents a red state. Sinema, although she's completely self-serving. Liz Cheney represents a deep red state that does not support the idea of the second impeachment of Trump and certainly doesn't support election shenanigans. So, apples to oranges. But the ground-up concept is that you have a huge amount of people in political positions in this country, and that this is a reflection of senators and people in Congress, a lot of governors, that don't really face any challenge to re-election. So you'll have a precinct captain. Again, a person outsizedly important in the local voting rules, putting up the polling places, deciding where those will be, organizing things on the local level on election day and so forth. Someone who is very, very important in that county's election, or that precinct's election rather, within the county. Sometimes the same thing in some very rural areas. They're very important. But they didn't run for re-election because they were the only person on the ballot. So what happens if you look at all of these people by the tens of thousands around the country, I believe, between the two parties? A lot of them are neolibs and neocons. If they're never facing a challenge, then it's the same person that was there since the 1990s or the 2000s. They have an outdated opinion about the way things should work. They're not hip to populism. I would ask the Democrats, do you think that your precinct captains and organizers are hip to the progressive movements, aka your communist ideology? No. Now you're a small movement which is faltering and failing. Populism is a huge movement. It's the majority of the GOP and a majority now, I think, of independents as well, if demographics are any indicator within the trend of registration within the parties. It has flipped for the first time in several decades. So the midterms are going to be very, very interesting. But it's working because you have people who don't have any talent. They were elected 20 years ago. They've just always perennially been in that position. Nobody bothers to show up, so the debate is just them giving a brief statement. The couple people that are there clap, and they say, oh, I guess I win. That's it. And Bannon realized this and decided to scoot them out by finding talented local people and saying, I'm sure we can get more than 2 or 3 people to vote for you. All we have to do is say, look, this is the person who represents populism. They are the Trump-style Republican for this precinct position, as opposed to the dude that's been there since the Reagan administration, who clearly is not. And so they're tossing him out. They've already flipped hundreds and hundreds of precincts and untold thousands of positions in only about a year's time. This is working. This is how you do it. This is what I've been stressing since Donald Trump was elected. It's not enough to have a populistic president. It's not enough for them to have narrow control of the House and Senate when you have a sub-ideology of neocons running both chambers. You have to kick them out. You have to kick precinct captains out, mayors, governors, etc. The GOP, again, as a non-Republican, I say this. I would be glad that this would happen if more populists were elected to the position of state representative, because that would be important in this. You're one state house away from a constitutional convention being possible. You're one state away from that, as of New Hampshire flipping in the last election. They flipped to the GOP. And by the way, that is a state house that is more populistic than many. Get the localities. In the midterms, field as many populists, especially for House positions, as possible, and have your red wave. Chip away all the neocons in Congress and in the state houses, their Congresses, and the governors. Make them as populistic as possible, and come 2024, under the right conditions, we can undo a century of damage through constitutional convention. Be easy. We could scrap the NFA. You wouldn't have any gun control in the country. Bye. You're gone forever. You're unconstitutional. We're getting rid of you. We could ban the concept of mandates, lockdowns, etc. No, we're going to have free movement. That was the inception of this country, the idea that people were individuals, they're allowed to move around as they wish, and even state governments, bound in part to parts of the Constitution, cannot prevent them from doing so. Hawaii wants to make people fucking show a vax card to enter the state. Well, last I checked, they weren't supposed to be doing that. That interstate commerce capability is meant to be federal, and that's, of course, construed far too broadly. That's another thing you could go after. Limitations on the Commerce Clause. You could end the drug war. We could save tens of billions of dollars a year, empty out 10-15% of our prisons. We could let out all the people that were imprisoned under Joe Biden, under the tough on crime rules. Hundreds of thousands of people. They've committed no violent act, no felony. They're guilty of 3 nonviolent misdemeanors under the wrong conditions, and they go to prison for 10 years, 20 years. We could spring them. Because clearly they've victimized no one. They had weed too many times, and it was before we had differential and deferential enforcement with regards to simple drug possession. We could fix the country. It's within our capability. You're one state house away from it, and I still see, and this is a uniquely conservative thing, I still see demoralized conservatives say, oh my god, the country's going to hell, there's nothing we can do. Don't bother to vote. Don't bother to knock on doors. You are on the precipice of a total victory. An intergenerational, complete victory. You're on the precipice of that if you just work a little bit harder. But you would rather be demoralized, because Republicans and conservatives more generally, they hate to win. They would rather lose and then be able to bitch about it, I think, sometimes. Some of these people are fucking losers. Well, sucks to be someone who's more activistic, I suppose, with that kind of friend. That's the worst kind of enemy to have. One that tells you, oh, I am your friend in combat, but it looks like we have lost and we should lay down our swords. No, fuck you. Go hack and slash a little bit more. Go ahead and fall on the battlefield if you want, but make sure that you go down swinging, not like a pussy. That's about all. Peace out.